Welcome to another episode of Washington in Focus Daily. I'm Washington Center Square's government correspondent, Carleen Johnson. It's day 31 of the legislative session, and there are some pretty impactful bills moving forward that I want to bring your attention to. So, one is a bill, and this has not gotten a lot of attention in this session, but a bill that opponents say could put Washington in the business of distributing abortion pills free of charge to clinics statewide and perhaps even nationwide. And it drew some very personal testimony this week from Senator Leonard Christian from Spokane Valley in the legislature. This is Senate Bill 5917. It's sponsored by Jessica Bateman, who's representing the Olympia area. And it would allow the Department of Corrections and their pharmacy group to redistribute an enormous supply of abortion pills to clinics in Washington and perhaps even other states. So a little bit of background is necessary here. So the state of Washington created this big stockpile of abortion pills, some referred to as Plan B. There's mifepristone and some other names that they're known by from their drug manufacturers. But the creation by Governor Inslee of this big stockpile came with fears that there was going to be a shortage of availability of abortion pills because of this U.S. Supreme Court decision, basically returning responsibility for abortion laws to the states. So the post Roe v. Wade area. So the concern here in the state of Washington and our Democratic lawmakers was we want to get as much of this stuff in our custody as possible in case there's some sort of restriction on the abortion pill. And given the fact that recent estimates show that more than 60% of teens and young women seeking abortions are using the abortion pill rather than going in and having the surgical abortion procedure, this is pretty significant piece of legislation. So on the Senate floor this week, Senator Leonard Christian of Spokane Valley urged lawmakers to adopt an amendment that would require clinics or telehealth providers to basically educate a woman receiving these pills to say, okay, if you take the first pill and then maybe 12 hours later you're thinking, what am I doing? I don't want to end this pregnancy, that they would have means to, whether it's a hotline or links or someone to give them information so that they would go, here's how you can potentially reverse this. It's a limited window from that first pill to the second pill for early term pregnancy to reverse an abortion, but it is an option and many women have chosen that. So he wanted an amendment in the bill but it didn't go over. It didn't go over. So, he did grow emotional, sharing how he deeply regrets his part in his girlfriend, now wife's, decision when they were 16 years old and she became pregnant and they decided to go in for an abortion. And he shared emotionally on the Senate floor this week that, it's a decision he lives with regret about and that his wife still suffers depression about more than 40 years later. After his testimony on Wednesday, after the Senate voted this off the floor, I spoke with him in the Senate wings about his concerns with the bill.
Hidden inside the bill would allow the Department of Corrections pharmacy to become the supplier of free abortion pills to the entire country. We tried to give them some amendments that would limit it to Washington State only. They wouldn't take it. We tried to get them to demand at least the cost payment back. They would not take it. In my personal opinion, I think this is them trying to figure out a way to provide abortion pills to states that have strict abortion laws at our taxpayers' expense. There's no guardrails and there's no max or minimum. It is completely, the sky's the limit. This is the Wild West of free abortion pills. Washington State would be leading it and the Washington citizens could be paying for it.
Now, again, backers of this legislation say the goal is really to improve distribution to prevent future waste. We've got all these pills now. Already tens of thousands of these pills have had to be destroyed because they expired, or they weren't stored properly in some cases. And so their goal in this bill is to say, we've got all these pills. Let's make sure we can get them disseminated to those that would want them before they expire. And the other issue of this is, before it was, we're charging providers because the state has this stockpile, so it wants to, put them out into clinics or potentially even other states and say, okay, we're going to charge you $5 a dose. This bill says it would be free. So Washington taxpayers have already paid for this, more than $2 million in between 2023 and 2025. And now, because there's this motivation to distribute these pills in a timely fashion, without taxpayers being refunded any of this expense, that's another concern from opponents. So I also spoke with a woman by the name of Christina Bennett. She's with a pro-life group called Live Action, and they've been raising concerns about the abortion pill and side effects that in many cases can lead to serious complications, even death. And they recently put out a video that reveals some of their insights and how some of these chemical abortion pills, with minimal oversight and without patients being notified of complications, some really scary things have happened. So Bennett with Live Action shared with me some of her concerns, and she said they're hoping to get their message through, but at this point, given that 60% plus of abortions are with the abortion pill, she hopes people will pay attention, to what they're hoping to reveal. So this is part of my interview with her.
Women will suffer from this being on the market in the way that it is. And the more that happens and the more stories are exposed, I think that'll probably wake up the American public to some extent. But we don't want that to happen. We don't want women to be hurt. But we know that it is happening. And unfortunately, when it does happen, sometimes that's the only thing that wakes people up because they are believing the lies of the industry that this is just about women's health and safety, and it's not at all.
Okay, let's move on to another piece of legislation that I don't think got a lot of attention this week in Olympia, but is likely going to affect you, your grandkids, and your great grandkids for years to come, because a bill that is advancing in the legislature would give Sound Transit the ability to issue bonds with not 40-year, 35 or 40-year maturities, but 75-year maturities. This is, if you want to look it up, Senate Bill 6148. And it initially, last year was proposed and asked for the extended bond bill, but it did not advance. But since then, Sound Transit has come out and revealed that their light rail plan is tens of billions of dollars over budget. And the agency also admits that their 2016 presentation to voters, where they said it was going to be a 25-year plan that cannot be implemented with the current debt limits. So they're saying we can't continue with projects as they are. We can't complete current light rail extensions. We can't finish what we've promised if we don't extend these bond obligations out for additional decades. What was interesting as I sat in the Senate wings and watched the debate on the floor on Wednesday, there was a Democrat who is often very progressive on many issues, but she spoke up in objection to the bill. This is Senator Twena Nobles, who's from Fircrest, Pierce County, one of the places that was promised light rail to arrive years ago, and they're still waiting. She was the only Democrat to join every Republican in opposition to the bill. So here is her short floor speech Wednesday.
I consistently hear my constituents say that Sound Transit is overpromising and underdelivering. I, too, want to support Sound Transit. I want to see more transit projects across our state, but in particular in the 28th Legislative District. And I don't know that with what we pay in our RTA that we are seeing our fair share of projects in the district. So I, too, will be a no vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
So during the initial public hearing on this legislation, in the State Senate Transportation Committee, we had Sound Transit CEO Dow Constantine, former King County executive, now Sound Transit CEO, making it, sound like this is not a big deal. We're just joining a federal program that allows us to extend these bonds out to 75 years. But there was a blog posted this week by Washington Policy Center, which I'm linking to my article on this, that says, okay, wait a minute, you're obligating our, grandkids, great grandkids to a debt service here way beyond what was initially promised. So, that's an obvious concern, because all of us here in Washington State know that our car tabs and our power bills and many other things that have a sound transit tax attached, it's a fairly significant hit. So I spoke with Senator Phil Fortunato, Republican from Auburn. He told me the bill obligates, as I just mentioned, multiple generations to projects that continue to explode with, these lengthy delays in completion. And here's some of that conversation with Senator Fortunato.
Sound transit has never been on time, ever. And I actually corrected myself. I said they have been on time and on budget, because they keep changing the schedule and keep changing the budget. I go, this is the most expensive mobile homeless camp on the planet. I go, many of us are here where we remember, whoops, the 5 nuclear power plants, which was the largest bond default in state history. This is going to be whoops on wheels. I go, I said, I was looking forward to going home and telling my constituents, hey, when your grandkids buy their second car, then you'll be able to pay off your car tabs, because the Sound Transit bonds will be paid off. Now, how many generations is this going to be? It's going to be 5 generations before you can get rid of these stupid bonds. I mean, this is just ridiculous.
So I should explain that some of that reference from Senator Fortunato, where he talked about whoops. If you're like me and well into your 50s or even a little bit younger, and you were here then, you remember the Washington Public Power Supply System, whoops, was a project in the 1970s that was supposed to build the 5 nuclear power plants here in Washington. And there were massive cost overruns. And it was actually the largest municipal bond default in U.S. history. Only one plant was ever completed before the entire thing was scrapped. So he referenced that, saying he thinks that Sound Transit's going to be, the next, or he said whoops on steroids or something like that. So there's some concern about that. But the bill did pass off of the Senate floor Wednesday, with all Republicans, joined by that one Democrat I mentioned, Senator Twena Nobles, voting in opposition, and it now moves to the House. So we will be back in Olympia on Friday, day 32 of the 60-day legislative session. We'll let you know what's going on. A whole bunch of action set for both the Senate and House floor with bills. We're still waiting for potentially the initiative killer bill to come up, the income tax bill to come up, some of the anti-ICE bills. We promise to bring you all those updates. I'll be there, and we'll talk to you tomorrow for another episode of Washington in Focus Daily. I'm Carleen Johnson with the Center Square. Thanks for watching.